17th day of August of this year, or forgive me, last year of 18 and 24, in front of 90,000 of its inhabitants. What a welcome. I traveled northwards into the upper part of the state, transferring over to Connecticut, onwards to Rhode Island, Providence to be sure, upwards into Massachusetts Bay, and of course to Boston, but a slight detour to Quincy, where I met with your second president, Monsieur John Adams. And in truth, upon reflection, it was he and Monsieur Jefferson who once said of me that I had a canine appetite for popularity. Still not quite sure what to make of that, but it was a pleasant visit regardless. I traveled southward to the noble city of Philadelphia, indeed the largest city in former English North America, and I even went to that place where you declared for independence. In fact, I referred to it as Independence Hall, and I hope that name will stick. Onwards to Baltimore, and then of course to the federal city of Washington, where I met and I thanked the President of the United States for his very kind invitation. But since then, friends, I have traveled throughout Virginia. I wintered in the federal city, and then I traveled southwards and westwards to places I had never been before, traveling once again through Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and now finally to Louisiana. Never setting foot upon this great land before, it is indeed then a treat. Now, my friends, my friend Armand Duplantier, whom we had met during the war. Many of you are quite familiar with our story, but those who are not, Armand, of course, was serving in the French army, part of the Foire Regiment. And it was during that time where portions of the Foire Regiment were dispatched to America, of course, after the great signing of the Treaty of Alliance on February the 6th of 1778. Many of these troops were to be found guarding the lucrative Sugar Islands of Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Saint-Domingue, and they took part in the Great Siege of Savannah in 1779. Well, it would be shortly thereafter that Armand and I would begin our relationship. He served as a liaison betwixt me and the French army, and so thus when the French army under General Jean-Baptiste Thomas Grenadier, the Comte de Rochambeau, would finally land with his expedition particulière in Newport in Rhode Island, July the 10th to the 11th of 1780, we were able to negotiate and make plans for the future. So it was the beginning of a wonderful friendship between the two of us. Eventually, he would finish his time in the French army and make his way here to Louisiana to establish himself for life with family and friends. Now, once Louisiana was finally sold to the Americans in 1803, some land was bestowed upon me, much further to the west, in a place that now bears my name of Lafayette. Being that I was unable to come to America at that time, it was in fact Armand who served me very well by negotiating the land holdings there with not only Monsieur Jefferson, but the following president, your fourth president, Monsieur Madison as well. So I am forever thankful for your kindness and your friendship. You know, my friends, coming to new lands such as this reminds me of why I came to America in the first place, to establish this great land of freedom and equality. There is still much yet to be done, but I have always been honored to serve in this great cause. I think of when I first heard of the noble cause, of what the Americans were fighting for. To me, it was a war like none other in the history of man. A war of great ideas, of the freedom, even the liberation of mankind, a war that had embraced the ideas of the great thinkers of what we often refer to as this enlightened age. Some calling it an age of reason. Men like Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, and Locke, speaking of representation in government and of an equality of mankind. This inspiration inspired me to come, and it has always burned brightly within my heart. When I first met Washington, I said to him, I have two countries now, France and the United States of America. My friends, I shall close with a story that I will tell about my time with Washington, the last time I spent with him, 1784. 2 glorious weeks at his beloved Mount Vernon, reflecting upon the war and the future of this nation. We rode on to Annapolis in Maryland, said goodbye to many officers we had the honor and privilege to have served with, and then finally on to Marlborough, where I would say my goodbyes. But not before the General said this to me. He said, Monsieur le Marquis, I sincerely believe that the easy part was winning this war. Of course, I could not imagine he would say so, after all of the trials and tribulations we had been through. But he explained it and further by saying, I do believe that the much more difficult part will be for these 13 former colonies that have now formed 13 United States, well, getting along with one another, surviving into the future. Well, my dear friends, look at how far you have come. From 13 to 24 United States, you have endured war, civil strife, turmoil, yet have endured. And why is that? Well, I dare say it is because of the foundation that was built at the price of so much sacrifice and blood by you, the American patriots. In fact, I will go further. I will say one day this nation shall serve as a beacon for all of the nations to look to as the truest example of freedom and of independence. God bless you all, my dear friends, and God bless this great nation of the United States of America.
Is this working? Sure is. Merci, mon général, and bonsoir, ladies and gentlemen. I am Armand Duplanchet, and I thank the General for that kind introduction. I'd like to point out that in addition to having had the honor of serving with General Lafayette during the American Revolution, I've also had the honor to serve as the host or the head of the official delegation hosting General Lafayette on his visit to Louisiana, which culminates here today. The big festivities of this afternoon, on the afternoon of the General's 1825 visit to Baton Rouge, was a dance and banquet at Madame Legend's Inn, a very respectable place which had a dining room and a ballroom, and which was located on the exact site of the building in which we now stand. At that time, the band was at one end of the room and had already begun playing. Armand Duplanchet said to General Lafayette, "My good friend, I wish to present my daughter Augustine and her husband, Madame Louis Esteban Favreau, and Judge Favreau himself, as well as my lovely little granddaughter, Augustine Favreau. Your visit would not be complete without meeting these members of my family." "Ah, Madame and Mademoiselle," Lafayette replied, kissing the hand of each. "I shall remember this moment with much pleasure." He then shook the hand of Judge Favreau. Hearing the dancing music had started and that the guests were waiting for the honored guest to lead the minuet, General Lafayette bowed and addressed the lovely 5-year-old Augustine. "Mademoiselle, I am somewhat a lame old duck, but perhaps you would honor me with this dance?" Augustine then grinned at the General and said, "Merci, monsieur. I would be happy to." And off went the delightful pair onto the dance floor with other couples following. Thank you.
Now we will bring up our Secretary of State, Nancy Landry, who will present a proclamation and lead us in a toast to the Marquis de Lafayette. Secretary Landry.
Thank you, Representative Bayham, and thank you to the hosts, Lynnel, Tommy, and Emma Grace for this wonderful event. And I'm here to read a proclamation honoring the Marquis, and I'm going to cut it a little bit short since it's so sunny out today. So whereas April 16th, 2025 marks the 200th anniversary of the Marquis de Lafayette's visit to the city of Baton Rouge during his famed 13-month farewell tour of the United States, And whereas the Marquis de Lafayette put his own life, honor, and fortune at stake by defying orders forbidding him to sail to America in 1777, and whereas the Marquis briefly returned to France in 1779, but returned the following year with the French fleet and 6,000 troops, he resumed his commission as the Major General in the Continental Army and fought through the siege of Yorktown in 1781 and the British surrender. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Landry, by the authority vested in me as the Secretary of State of Louisiana, do hereby honor Gilbert du Motier, Marquis de Lafayette, and urge all citizens to show him the respect and honor befitting a steadfast friend of the founders and one of America's earliest heroes. And now I'd like to make a toast to General Lafayette. Let's raise our glasses. To the Marquis de Lafayette, who graced Baton Rouge with his presence 200 years ago, and whose actions still inspire us to take up the fight for liberty every day. May his memory be a reminder of the bonds of friendship between the United States of America and France, first forged at Yorktown and sealed on the shores of Normandy. Let us remain united in our shared pursuit of liberty and carry our fraternal bond through the 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen, to General Lafayette. Vive l'Alliance.
Next, I would like to invite Baton Rouge State Representative Dixon McMakin, who will deliver a proclamation on behalf of the city of Baton Rouge. He will then lead us in the singing of Grand Old Flag right after. Dixon?
Proclamation from the city of Baton Rouge, Parish of East Baton Rouge Parish, whereas his visit to Baton Rouge marked a moment of profound civic pride as residents gathered to greet a living legend whose courage and convictions helped shape the American experiment in self-government. And whereas 2 centuries later, the legacy of Marquis de Lafayette continues to inspire generations of Baton Rougians, and his visit stands as a milestone in our city's storied history. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the city of Baton Rouge do hereby proclaim this day, April 11th, 2025, as Marquis de Lafayette Day in the city of Baton Rouge.
We are going to now bring up Denise Bennett and John Scourge to do a presentation.
Thank you. Wasn't that just wonderful? And the dancing was a delight, wasn't it? On behalf of the American Friends of Lafayette, Louisiana, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Bold Strategies for not only supporting this event, but for bringing history to life in such a personal and heartfelt way.
Thank you for everything. And in case everybody's wondering, I am fine. Lafayette bled for us. I gladly bleed for Lafayette. Yeah, right. And I want to my heartfelt thanks to Lynnel Ruckert for reaching out to us, because this was not a planned event until just a few months ago. And she has been not only supportive, but extremely enthusiastic about our recreating history today. So Lynnel, thank you so much again.
It was an honor for my colleagues, Tommy Johnson and Emma Spencer and I, to work on this event. When Representative Bayham called us with the idea, we jumped on it. We're so honored to welcome the Lafayette to Baton Rouge and to honor the Tessier family. How many families, this is so interesting, 200 years later, they're still in Baton Rouge and still making a difference. So let's all stand together, please, on the back of your program. We're going to sing the Grand Old Flag. So show elected officials. Okay, Denise.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take over the mic one more time. On behalf of the American Friends of Lafayette, Louisiana, we want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Sims Favreau. The reenactment of your family's oral tradition story added a truly special dimension to our gathering. We really appreciate it. And then many thanks to Sophia Tessier. Your sharing of this piece of the Duplantiers' legacy, and for doing it with such charm, grace, and generosity is so appreciated. Thank you.
So let's stand together. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you reign. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true under red, white, and blue, and there's never a boast or brag. Let your old acquaintance be forgot. Keep your eye on the grand old flag.
We also want to thank the musicians here today: Rachel Reese-Kohlmeyer on violin, Anna Stanley on violin, Sonia Ferez Lloyd on viola, and Kimberly Sands on cello. And we have pralines and champagne for everyone. Thank you, everyone. We also have a descendant of Ponce de Leon in the audience, so Jennifer Bollinger, raise your hand.
Thank you all for coming out to this very important event celebrating Louisiana's part in the American 250. Please visit our website to see other events we have going on between now and July 4th, 2026.